Okay, so this might be a dumb question. Since when was Seraph of the End, or Funimation, supported by Universal? Because the Universal logo was at the beginning of this episode of Seraph of the End. And if it's been there before, I must be having a memory lapse. Or, yeah, I must be very fucking tired. Like, I don't really remember Universal Studio on Seraph of the End. So seeing that in this episode, when I started the episode, I thought I was watching, like, the wrong thing. I had to check the title of the freaking series just to make sure I was watching what I should be watching, because Universal popping up for an anime? What? Just like, what? So, yeah, I don't remember seeing that logo. I do not remember seeing that logo. Anyways, okay, let's just, talk about this week's episode of Seraph the End. Let's move past that. This episode introduces a new female character. Her name is like Sanga or Sange or something like that. It starts with an S, and so far from her character, she seems to be like an old you, or like an old female character. Like, her personality in the past was pretty much a carbon copy of how Yu is right now, of how he wants to rush out, save everybody, and put his group at risk. That's kind of what this new girl is like. She was his personality in the past, and from what we get to see from some characterization and backstory, is that at one point in time, she was part of a group, she was trying to be like, Yu, run out and save someone, and then eventually it caused it to where her group got annihilated and everybody died, and she was probably the sole survivor. So, in the act of that, it seems like she has changed and she hates people that were similar to her in the past. So, is that possible foreshadowing? Like, does anyone feel like the way that was done in this episode, it felt like it was done as a point of foreshadowing that maybe this might happen to you in the future? Like, it might be possible you is going to cause something like this and then one of his friends are going to die? Like, in a similar fashion? Because I have that feeling the way that was done, that was like some form of foreshadowing. It felt like that to me. It personally did. Now, besides that, with her introduction as a character, her personality, from my first impressions of her, she seems like a character that's going to be a very interesting character when it comes to be around our main female character, Shinoa, because I love her personality, the way it clashes with Shinoa, and the way they have these little, skirmishes between this episode. Like, oh my god, those scenes are probably the best scenes of the episode. Like, when it came down to Shinoa and this new girl introduced, when they were bickering and fighting, or technically, the new girl was bickering, and Shinoa was just smiling like a devil, and just like, oh, just, the faces she made is just freaking amazing. It really is, and I have to admit, I neglected to talk about it, and I do need to say this right now to get my thoughts out there. But our main female character, Shinoa, I feel like she's really the one main thing that's really supporting this show right now. Because I've seen a lot of complaining or different things when it comes to series, when it comes to certain cliches and stuff like that. But when it comes to our main female character, Shinoa, she's definitely an amazing character. Like, out of all the characters, she is my favorite character thus far. From the series, from what I've seen, not looking at strength, feats, and stuff like that, just looking at straight-up personality, our main female character, Shinoa, is amazing. I love her personality. It's so great. Especially in this episode, she was shining like a gem with what she was doing. She was trolling this new girl. She was straight up fucking trolling him. And then when she mentions, like, oh, my sister, she used to have a big rack. I had all that. And I'm like, what the fuck? And then she brings this up, and then we kind of find out that her sister is already dead. So I'm going to take a little bit of a theory crafting right here. Like, I'm going to have a theory. I'm assuming something very dark has happened to Shinoa in the past. Because she hints at that in this episode. Like, she says a couple times throughout the entire episode, like at the beginning, she says, everybody in this day or time has lost someone. And so she has lost her sister that was older. And you also find out towards the end of the episode, she talks about the new female character that was introduced. Like, oh, she has a dark past. Don't judge her too fast and stuff like that. She has quite a dark past. And that felt like it might have been Shinoa talking about herself. So there was two different scenes in this episode. It felt like Shinoa wasn't specifically trying to talk about the people around her. It was kind of like she was talking about herself and revealing these different points of characterization when it comes to her character. So I'm going to bet that we're probably going to see something very tragic in her past. And if I think about it, in last week's episode, her past wasn't really revealed at all. Like, it was kind of skimmed over completely, and we didn't get to see much characterization when she tried to get her weapon. So, yeah, you gotta think about that. So, yeah, they're definitely trying to hint at something very tragic for her character. That's obvious after this episode, so I wonder where that's going to lead. Speaking of that, when it comes to characters, you activate some form of bodily ritual tattoo thing all over his body. It looks like some form of ancient ritual tattoos. And I'm assuming and guessing that this, like, tattoo that popped up on his body is probably whatever, like, his 10% non-human substance in him is. Like, as we found out in last week's episode, Yu is not fully human. So, I'm assuming that with the markings like that, that was actually whatever is non-human inside of Yu coming out. And that's kind of why the vampires were freaking out, because you see these vampires like, what the fuck is that? Like, they didn't look at his weapon, because they see those weapons all the time in combat, but they looked at him as if those markings were just very weird. So we'll have to see where that goes, because, yeah. Oh, yeah, speaking of the markings, I don't know if anyone noticed. I don't know. But when Yu goes off and attacks the vampires with the markings on his face, right before that, like, I want to point this out. As soon as the markings appear, you see it appear on Yu's face. And then it cuts over to Shinoa and everybody else. And then if you look at, you know, these little off-distance panel shots or, you know, screenshots of Yu, you see the markings not there. So it's very funny. It looks like the animators forgot to animate the markings on Yu's face in between the two scenes. Like I said, look at the scene when the markings first appear on his face, and then look in the middle segment, like, you know, where Shino and all that, it goes off of his camera, and you see it focus mainly on the other cast members, and you see him kind of in the background. You'll see how he doesn't have the markings, and then you'll see it go back to Yu, and Yu has these markings still on his face. So, yeah, it seems like the animators did a little bit of a derp right there in between those segments. So they forgot to animate the markings on his face. But nothing too bad, but it just is really funny, because you'd think they would remember something like that, since the markings are a very vital point to Yu's character in this episode, since it was kind of reveal what he kind of looks like with whatever non-human is inside of him. So that's about it when it comes to that. Overall, the episode, I felt like it was a very enjoyable episode. It was fun to watch. It was a same old episode of Seraph of the End. I mean, if you've enjoyed the series thus far, you're going to enjoy this episode. So yeah, tell me your thoughts in the comments below. I love you all so much. Please be safe. Chibi out.